Hey folks, welcome back to XL 10 Minute Leaders Live, a stage for those in the world of leadership to help us find out and discover different parts of our lives, make them better, improve, or at least bring to the surface subjects that need to be aired. As somebody famous once said, the whole world is a stage. And all the men and women are merely actors. They have their exits and their entrances. And in his life, a man will play many parts. His life separated in two. How many acts, Robert?
3x.
Okay. All right. Today we're going to do Shakespeare. And we're going to use Shakespeare to address some pretty, whilst it may be theatrical, but some pretty serious subjects as well. Welcome to the show, Robert Boog.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, Graham.
Well, obviously we've kind of we teed it up, haven't we? We've set it up what we're going to talk about. Do you know which Shakespeare play that one's from? It's often quoted. The whole world is a stage.
I think it's As You Like It or Macbeth,
Okay.
one of the two. Yeah.
What's your favorite Shakespeare play?
Twelfth Night. I like that one for the fun of it, kind of.
Is that sort of what the purists often say is the best Shakespeare? There must be a lot of debate among Shakespeare fans, isn't there, about which is the best play?
Oh, yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Oh, usually they'll go for Hamlet or Macbeth or things like that.
These are easy ones to choose, though, aren't they? Because they're the very dramatic and
Correct.
sincere
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, I like the fun of going to a play. You can see a play outdoors and things like that.
Hmm.
So I like the fun ones.
Hmm. When did you first discover Shakespeare?
Um, Probably when 1976, I think, something like that. I mean, I probably read 20 plays at one time or something. And I listened, I found at the library they had these booths where you could sit down and listen to them.
Hmm.
So that made it come alive in my head when you hear different actors and actresses and things like that. So
Hmm.
that was a lot of fun.
How does that work in a world where we have Hollywood and very high-end production, graphics, movie narratives, very worked out scripts, complex sets, and then Shakespeare seems to be very basic and in many ways people might say it's dated. How would you
Well, the
respond
beauty
to
of
that?
it's almost like if you watch a production of Macbeth, they can turn it into a post apocalyptic kind of play that resonates today, or they can make it into some, they. What's great about it, it's almost like a trigonometry question where they can put in these different parts and put it into different parts of history. So you'll have these productions that will have Donald Trump as Richard III or something like that, just put it into different contexts, but it still rings true. So I
Right. Is
don't
that
know.
a good casting, Donald Trump as Richard III?
I don't want to go down that road, but
Isn't he My Kingdom for a Horse? Is that Richard III? Was that Henry
I think,
the? I can't remember which one it was. You would know, I'm sure, a lot better than
oh,
me.
no, see, the thing is that I got really more involved into the authorship question, like
Hmm.
who was the real author, and so I was during the 2020 California was locked down like Blockbuster Video, so I was watching TV and I noticed all these commercials for Latuda, and I was wondering to myself, with so many commercials for this product, I mean, it must cost a lot. I mean, how much does it cost? So I Googled it on my iPhone, and it cost like $1,500 for a 30-day supply. And I was wondering, what does this, you know, what is its purpose? And it treats bipolar symptoms. Then later that day, I was on Twitter and I heard Sir Patrick Stewart reading a sonnet a day, And the sonnet that he chose was filled with gloom and doom. And I thought to myself,
Hmm.
it sounds like old Shaky could use some Latuda. And then I realized, what if that were true? I mean, what if
Hmm.
the real person who wrote these works was, you know, bipolar um, affective disorder? He had that disorder.
Hmm.
And the weird thing about bipolar disorder is that it's not like COVID where they can take a Q-tip up your nostril and test for antibodies or even a blood test or an X-ray. Um, it's a mood disorder. So you can be happy one day and sad the next, or 15 minutes later. I mean, it's kind of, it's one of those things that we still in 2021 are still getting a handle on. And it's
Hmm.
the scary part is that it appears to be increasing. So I would I want to spread the word that I think that bipolar disorder should be taught with Shakespeare, at least
Hmm.
because the symptoms start arising when someone turns in their early adulthood from ages 19 to 26. And that's when people are studying Shakespeare. So why not,
Hmm.
look at this as kind of like, you can laugh or, make fun of Shakespeare, whatever you want, but still bipolar disorder is a very serious thing. And I think it's just a good way to spread the word about it.
Hmm. We're going to have a look at your book in a minute, Robert. But before we do that, are you bipolar, or does somebody you know close to you have bipolar disorder?
Yeah, I am not bipolar, but
Hmm.
my niece recently um, was tested and hospitalized for a week and went to a recovery place for 1 month. And
Hmm.
this kind of happened all at the same time. So, yeah, I
Hmm.
was probably affected by, hearing about her treatment and wanting to know more about it. And kind of, so it's kind of like, one of these coincidences that all these, you know, forces uh, took place. She was
Hmm.
an A, I mean, she was an A student who got into a confrontation. They didn't understand what was going on. And all of a sudden, this college student that had the world in front of her suddenly, freaked out and had an incident. So,
Hmm. I wonder if, you know, people realize they have bipolar disorder. It's only when you give it a name that they can diagnose. Is that the kind of problem that I imagine in Shakespeare's day as well? They wouldn't have anything like that. It would have just been sort of a strange character, if you like, trait of his.
yeah, the interesting thing about it is it does leave a mark in that there are symptoms that you can check. And like one of the symptoms is like, because there's the manic symptoms and depressive symptoms. One of the manic symptoms is overspending. We're spending
Hmm.
excessively. So, for example, the Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford inherited what would be like $70 million today when he turned 21, and by the age of
Hmm.
31, he had spent it all. I mean, that's
Wow.
incredible. And another thing is just a lot of risk taking. And so, if you see a student that is suddenly taking these risks or sexually impulsive, they're doing all these things. And that's the strange thing about it is that um, you know, a lot of kids will play video games late in the night, and not sleeping or insomnia is one of the symptoms. And so
Hmm.
it's very hard to tell. And so parents are probably thinking, oh, they're just going through a stage. And, you know, it's normal, this behavior,
Hmm.
getting rowdy, getting in
The
fights.
phase.
I mean,
Yeah.
they have all these things. And it's very, that's why I think that it might be helpful for students that they could say, what, I just read up on this and it,
Hmm.
you might want to have it checked out. You can actually take a test online that pairs your symptoms or the moods that you've been feeling with the actual symptoms of bipolar disorder. So
Hmm.
they make it obviously you want to see a healthcare professional after taking that test if it says you should consider, you know,
Hmm.
um, you
Well,
may
it's a good
have.
starting point, isn't it, in terms of
Exactly.
self-diagnosis? Let's see your book, Robert, because I think the title will give people an idea of. Just hold it up here. Just move it a bit towards your center. That's right. Shakey's Madness. Was he bipolar? Are you pretty convinced of that?
That's what I'm. That's what I believe is that the real author was the Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, and he was bipolar.
Hmm.
And we've all heard of like a paranoid schizophrenic, and people like that, they don't want anything to do with their work. And that's what I think happened here is we have a person who did not want to be known as the author.
Hmm.
And he, very intelligent person who hid it. Um, he could care less if this man from Stratford was well, it's kind of like this though. One day he might he may have wanted to crave attention, but then for 2 months later, he felt depressed about it. That's the way I think it worked.
Hmm.
And so he died in 1604, and therefore, um, I don't know. I think people generally just went along with this other man from Stratford because the Earl was okay with it. And
Hmm. It's a mystery. We don't really know, do we? But it's an interesting theory. Do you feel that Shakespeare or whoever he really was would have been as creatively brilliant as he was without the condition? Or do you think the condition made him what he was?
I think the condition made him what he was. And we see this with a lot of very creative people and very talented people too. So although I, I hate to use the word suffer, like he suffered from this disorder,
Hmm.
he basically had to endure it. So it did not define his life. And I think that's the message that we can learn is that, Frank Sinatra, um, Ernest Hemingway, Britney Spears, a lot of people
Hmm.
endure bipolar disorder. It does not define them. And a very famous writer, Kurt Vonnegut,
Hmm.
said that writing is what helped him. So if that is, if he said that in 2005 and Kurt Vonnegut had bipolar disorder, why not this man who lived in the from 1550 to 1604? Why not the same thing? He wrote a million words because he had to. It was, it's what kept his sanity or
Yeah.
helped
His
him.
therapy, right? His way of
Exactly.
working through the thoughts that he had. And a lot of people talk about it in that context, like putting it onto paper and getting it
Exactly.
out is his way of rationalizing, or at least, trying somehow to assimilate it in his own experience, right? Which is not easy if it's all going around inside your head. Wow, it's fascinating. It's an unsolved mystery, really, but it's a fascinating insight into a cultural icon. And I like the way that you're approaching it by using that as a window or a gateway into more complex but important subjects here today, bridging 500 years. And like the connection as well between the age groups, the people who learn Shakespeare, and the age groups you're most likely to be affected by it as well. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting piece of work there, Robert. Where do we find out more about you and your writing?
You can find out about me and my writing at my website, robertboog.com. Um, I don't, I really don't really talk about myself there that much, but I am the fifth child in a family of 9 children. So I have 4 older siblings and 4 younger. So I was
Hmm.
given the great gift of poverty, and yeah, it helped me. become who I am. I own a real estate company with my wife, and we're living the dream in sunny Southern California. 2 dogs, 2 kids. My kids are in, they're out of college and things like that. So we're kind of like, but these days when you see, well, my wife's mother has dementia, so I see these kinds of mental disorders around me. My niece, my mother-in-law. So it is kind of like, it, you know, it what is happening today most likely happened 500 years ago, except the cure for um, bipolar disorder back in Shakespeare's day. They had 2 cures actually, and one was whipping someone and putting them in a dark room because they believed, it was the work of the devil. So, and we find this in Twelfth Night, where with Malvolio, and they talk about it there. There was another cure, and it was called mumia or mummy, where they would take a dead body from Egypt and grind it up, and apothecaries would sell it. Now, apparently, it was very expensive because it was shipped all the way from Egypt, and I think it was used kind of like smelling salts. So they would, because they said the smell, it smelled like gasoline or something, sulfuric like that, and they would put it under someone's nose, and so it reeked basically. And we see that in Othello. It's kind of like a plot device because Othello's, wife Ophelia loses his handkerchief, but it was his mother's handkerchief that had mumia in it, and so she couldn't just go to buy, a brand new handkerchief, and so it kind of like filled a plot device. But yet, why would someone from Stratford upon Avon, which is roughly 100 miles away from downtown London, why would someone there, a Glover's kid, be using mummy or mumia when he was a child or something? Or how would he know about it? That kind of thing doesn't make sense. Los Angeles to San Diego, that's 100 miles. That's the distance between where Shakespeare lived and, where he worked. And yet, for being such a great writer, Shakespeare never wrote one single letter to any of his friends. And considering that it was a 3-day ride by horseback from London to Stratford upon Avon, not one of his friends today, not one letter has ever been found. And
Wow.
to me, that just
It speaks
over 400
volumes, right?
years. Yeah, you would think. The other thing too is that Shakespeare died in 1616, yet we have no word about how great of a writer he is until 1623, when the first folio was published. So we don't, we have a massive silence for 7 years after his death, and no public funeral, no public mourning. Maybe John Lennon died and did not want a public funeral, but I don't think Shakespeare, I don't know. The Man from Stratford doesn't make sense for a number of reasons, and that's a couple of them right there.
Well, a lot of unanswered questions there, Robert. Thank you for joining us today and sharing a little bit of your world with us here today on XL 10 Minute Leaders Live.
Well, thank you, and congratulations to England for their victory over Denmark.
We'll take it until Sunday at least. Thank you, Robert.